Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn, and this week I talked to Nikki Gonzalez from the Automation Ladies Podcast to learn about her career, her company, and the origin story behind her podcast. Nikki, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast to tell us all about your excellent podcast that you have yourself. But before we get into that, I wanted to learn a little bit about you and introduce you to my audience. So let's start. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Shawn. I am a recovering sales engineer in industrial automation. I started working for my dad in his small business when I was a kid. He's an engineer and always been interested in that problem solving. I ended up becoming a sales engineer for machine vision systems and sensors, mechatronic motion out of college. And then I ventured into the startup world and got into supply chain and data analytics for planning, procurement, and things like that. And now I work for a startup in the industrial automation space where we are applying those sort of principles to the supply chain when it comes to procuring industrial automation parts. So I'm a little bit of a weird hybrid. Used to be out in the field, and now I sit behind a computer most days helping machine builders, panel builders, OEMs source those problem components they can't get because of the supply chain crisis. And doing that while also, building a whole back-end software and system behind to support that, hopefully, so that we can start, doing this in a more connected way going forward, rather than me calling up 20 distributors every day, trying to ask if they have something in stock or not.
Yeah, and that's even more of a big deal today, right? With everything that's going on over the last few years. So let's jump into that. So you have this background in industrial automation. You know what it's all about. You've been there in the field. You've done some of the engineering, and now let's talk about the startup that you're working with, and tell us about that. What does it, what's it called? Where are you at in the progress of releasing it, launching it, growing it, and give us all the skinny on that, what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I actually ended up jumping into this with one of my old coworkers from Festo. Our CEO, Roman Piche, he started out as a machine builder. He's an electrical engineer, built a lot of panels and different types of machines. And then he ended up overseeing the iPhone operations at Apple for about 5 years, all of their hundreds of lines of equipment that build the iPhones. And a common theme that he had throughout his career, and something that I didn't really understand as much coming from the sales side, is how much time engineers spend on just procuring the items that they need to build, especially if you're in more of the custom machinery or, systems integration. You're not building the same machine 200 times. You have to do a little bit of redesign. You have to, find out what components are going to work for you, how to fulfill that BOM. The way that our supply chain and sort of go to market for these companies has been, same way in the last 30 years or so, is that you have these regional distributors, right, that you have to deal with for all the different brands. And oftentimes, even under one brand, you have multiple, different lines, and some distributors support some of them and some don't. And his experience, and this is something that I've heard over and over from companies ranging from, 5 people shops to, the big names that you know of, that everybody knows, right? They all tell me that their engineers spend way too much time on procurement when really they should be spending their time engineering. So this idea is not new in terms of what Quotebeam is doing and building. It's evolved over time. Roman had this in the back of his mind way back, years and years ago. And he ended up going to Stanford and meeting Andrew Core, who is our CTO. He's a young guy. He, got a software engineering degree and started building highly secure and scalable file sharing software and things like that for Venmo and Box. And we wanted to bring that sort of technology, the new software, API enabled data software that's built on the backbone of data, to the procurement sort of side of our business, which has kind of stayed very much the same for, I would say, a big chunk of the more, especially the regional distributors in our space. They're very used to doing business in person, showing up at the customer site. And this is what I used to do. So I understand the value of having a knowledgeable sales engineer. It's not about replacing sales engineers with all of a sudden just the internet and data, right? We have the, DigiKeys and Allied Electronics for that just have a lot of stock and it's easy to find. But we really wanted to bring that sort of convenience that especially newer engineers that are just coming out of college, they go to the internet first before they call their local distributor. because they want the information right away and they want it quickly. And they oftentimes will buy from these big online supply houses, not even knowing that they could have a close relationship with the local distributor that understands their business and what they're building, for the sake that they're not as easily accessible online. So Quotebeam was kind of born as this idea of how do we make it more efficient for engineers to procure their bill of materials when they're working with multiple different distributors to fill that. Because generally, even if you have a great local distributor for one part of your build, their line card generally won't support literally everything that you need, whether it's in the control cabinet, and then you've got your motion, and there's so many things that go into custom machinery, that as much as everybody likes to be called the one-stop shop, the reality is it's not feasible for anybody to be a complete one-stop shop in and of themselves, right? And nowadays, with COVID, a lot of things changed. A lot of people I hear, they're sourcing components everywhere they can find them, including Amazon and eBay and these online marketplaces. But the truth is those marketplaces were not built for our industry. We don't have a way to input all the attributes and the technical information that we need in order to be able to find, the right products. And then again, they're very much just a layer in between. You don't necessarily know who you're dealing with. So Quotebeam has evolved a little bit over time as we kind of got into the nitty gritty of working with distributors, and helping them figure out how to best use an online resource like us, working with customers, how they, like to look for the products that they need, what technical information do they need to spec, where are they going to find products. And so we launched our marketplace of Quotebeam, which is really just, we want to tie all of what we are calling dark stock, the stock that sits in the back room of local and regional distributors that isn't connected to the internet. And you would have to know who to call in order to find out if they have something. So that's kind of our number one low-hanging fruit goal, to bring those distributors onto our platform, to make it easy for customers to find them in their stock, to help everybody with that last 5% of their bill of materials that they just can't find. But ultimately, we want to build a platform and productivity tools that can help those that deal with complex bills of materials manage those things more effectively and more quickly. Even if it's using their existing relationships with their existing distributors, we can provide tools that enable them to collaborate more quickly. There's a whole host of things that we have planned. Won't bore you with all of the details of all of our future vision and roadmap, but ultimately we want to help and connect everybody in the industry to make it easier to do business. And the first thing that we're doing is building this marketplace. And like I said, we launched it about 6 months ago now. We've grown at an incredible rate. We are having, the good problem of growing, right, and trying to keep up. And we're actively hiring people. We've grown quite a bit. Our team, we're a remote team, so it's actually very easy for us to hire right now because we offer flexibility that is a little bit harder to find in our industry. And yeah, I just got off the phone with the distributor where I was so excited. I found 30 pieces of connectors that my customer desperately needs to start builds next week. And it was something that we couldn't have found on the internet. But ultimately, it's not efficient for anybody to call 50 to 80 different companies every time you need something. So that's kind of what Quotebeam is about. I don't really have an elevator pitch. We've been, just kind of knee deep in figuring out how do we best serve our market. It's not about us coming out with a tool that we think, hey, this is the best thing ever. We know there's a problem and we're here to solve it, and we'll solve it in whatever way makes sense, the most sense for everybody involved.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, as I'm building stuff and trying to show students how to, put together a trainer so they can do their own lessons at home if they're self-learning. And I'm just thinking about the challenges I've had with a lot of those sources of products. Um, sometimes you get the wrong thing. Sometimes you can get something today, but it goes out and you can never buy the same thing again. And, it's a very frustrating. And in many cases, they have like high volume stuff, but the low volume stuff you just can't find. It's so frustrating. So I can definitely, my wife does real estate when she's not being a principal, and
Mhm.
the MLS where all the real estate agents list their inventory. It's just such a win. And of course, she has the back end version where she can
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
RPRs and all that. And it's just phenomenal for all real estate agents to have a tool like that. So I can definitely see where this could really help distributors and customers, OEMs, find each other and get what they need without having to spend hours and hours and hours. I mean, I remember back in the day the Thomas Register, and like if I had to go into the Thomas Register, it was like nightmare. It's like that's how hard up you were. And like half the people, because it was a print, half the people were out of business or didn't do that product anymore. And so I
Yep.
can definitely get a kind of a feel for what you're doing. Now, if somebody listening is saying, wow, I want to know more about that, where would they go?
So go to quotebeam.com.
Okay.
When I spell it on the phone to people, it's like the word price quote and then BEAM, like beam me up, Scotty. All one word. Quotebeam.com.
Quotebeam.com. All right, great. That's pretty easy.
And yeah, it's free to use. We don't charge anything to anybody. All we take is a small percentage of the transaction if you find something that you want to buy and one of our distributors has it. Try to keep it super simple. And we have both a lot of inventory connected on the website right now. So you might be able to find a part number and we'll try to show you how much we have in stock. We're very particular about not showing outdated stock. Although, of course, that's a problem that, you do have corner cases and we're working really, really hard to try to make that information as real time as possible. And then we have a chat on our website. And it's a little bit different from the chat that you'll find on every other website because we tried a lot of those and we ended up building our own
All right.
because, again, our industry is a bit niche, right? And there's certain things that, softwares that were built for everybody in the world don't do well when it comes to our business. So I got tired of going on distributors' websites or online resellers' websites or whatever. I see a chat, great. I can ask them a question. Is this really in stock? Can I buy it? And they would say, oh, give us your email address and we'll send you a quote. And then I would have to wait, 3 hours. Maybe I would get the quote, maybe I wouldn't. So we built our own chat where we can produce a quote and send it to you in the chat, and you can click on it and you can place your order right there from the
Nice.
quote. And you can see the product information, the specs, the picture of what you're buying. And our chats never close. Most chat softwares are built for customer service interactions, and their number one goal is to take care of your problem and get it closed out because
Yep.
that's what their KPIs are built on. How do you quickly resolve these issues? In a sales situation, I don't want to close the door on you just because I, answered your question, right? It's a relationship that we're building here, whether it's through a website. I'm a real person, even though the website is the medium we're using to interact. So our chats are always available later on. So if you asked a question about a product and you got a quote and you're not able to make a decision, guess what? You can come back 5 days later and pick right back up on that chat and say, hey, I'm now ready to place this order. Or you know what? Actually, I need this different part number. That all kind of lives there. So we have a little dashboard and we really thought of it like everybody loves shopping on Amazon. I love shopping on Amazon. Sometimes even though I know I can get a cheaper price somewhere else, I know Amazon stores my credit card securely. I know that I can look up all my past orders in one place. I don't have to remember some random website that I went to and, put in my information and where it went. So we, kind of thought of that sense of convenience. You can deal with all your different, distributors kind of in one place and keep records of that and come back anytime. So the reason I say that is come to our website. It's free to use. If you don't find what you're looking for, drop us a line in the chat and tell us what you're looking for. And chances are we have 20 different distributors right now that are backlogged to bring their inventory into our system. They might have it. Or I know 20 different people to call. And guess what? I'll go through that effort to call them for you if you don't know. Because something I've realized lately, I've been doing this for a little over a year now, helping people find the products and source them. Even my Google results are personalized now to looking for industrial automation parts. So when I Google something, I sometimes get better results than my colleagues that just started doing this, a month ago. And it's because the algorithms know me and they know that I'm serious about buying components. And I also have a huge Rolodex of people to call that maybe don't have their inventory online or, things like that. So we really, it's a community effort, and anybody can go in there and drop us a line and ask for help when it comes to whatever it is that they're having a challenge sourcing.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. I think 2023 will be the year of transparency because I really think, even, try to find an American-made pencil on Amazon, and their system is so geared. It's kind of like Google and all these other people. They're so
Yeah.
geared to sell you their high margin products. Like
Right.
Google is it's more of a political bias, but with Amazon, it's like they call it, we used to see it as a sponsored product and we ignored that. And so now they don't make that so obvious anymore. And so it
Yeah.
gets really frustrating. I think one of the trends we're going to be seeing is transparency that, if is this what I searched for? Is this what you're trying to push? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's helpful to have, a company that you're trying to meet the customer's needs, right? You're not trying to put all your suppliers out of business by opening your own warehouse, which
Right.
which which is a big would be a big problem in a situation like this. But I do want to get back to your chat, and I asked the audience to forgive me. I'm still getting over this cold. I feel great, but I get this cough that's lingering. Um, One of the things I think you'll find the distributors want is a chat system like you have for supporting their customers. So you may want to,
Yeah.
you guys may in the future want to sell your chat system because I know as a specialist who did technical stuff, it was always a struggle to try to quantify, you know, how much we helped each customer
Yeah.
because you could spend hours with a customer and then they say, well, you're going to give me 5% more off your product, and you'd be like, okay, well, how about we don't spend 5,000 hours supporting your staff this year? You know,
I know. And that's one of the
it's
things
so
like
you can't
we heard
quantify that.
is like, oh, you're developing an online marketplace, you're just gonna, it's gonna be a race to the bottom. And that is absolutely the last thing that we want, because we understand the value of a good distributor relationship. It's not, and this is our personal mantra when it comes to, fulfilling or helping customers fulfill orders. We don't really care if we make a profit on one singular transaction, right? Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Things like we will sometimes estimate shipping wrong. We're not going to come back and charge you more for shipping just because we got it wrong. And same thing as very short-sighted to take a distributor's time to help you spec a product or understand what you're looking at, and then hammering them on price for the 5%. You know, you're you're biting the hand that feeds you, essentially
Yep.
doing that. And guess what? The distributor's not going to help you out next time,
Yeah.
because so it's a give and take on both sides. And that's, I think, what good relationships are built on. And just because we now want to do more of these relationships on the internet doesn't mean that that changes, right? It's not just transactional. And yeah, you can go get transactional on eBay or Amazon. But we find that our distributors want to be able to, diversify to online sales, but how do they keep that, the value add that they bring, other than just, yes, I can sell you this product, which at this point, a lot of different places can sell you that product,
Yep.
Including national distributors that do nothing but stock and then just
Yep.
give you product. But yeah, that actually, thank you. That is a very good feedback. And I'm glad you say that. We do have a couple of distributors using our chat on their own websites as well.
Nice.
So it's not something we're really pushing right now, but it is something that we offer to distributors.
That's
Um,
awesome because I can see how helpful because especially with everybody downsizing, the great resignation and retirement, and
yeah,
being able to go back and say, oh, I know I talked to this guy last week, but I don't remember what we talked about. To be able to pull that up and say, feel like confident that say, oh yeah, here's the link to the quote, here's the link to the manual. I can see that being real helpful. Now, the actual reason, just for the audience, the reason I found Nikki, the reason we kind of ran into each other is because I'm only doing a podcast once a week. And so I've been going out there on LinkedIn and trying to find other automation podcasters who who do shows so that my audience will have, if they have 5 days a week to get a drive to work, they'll have,
yeah,
or work out in the gym or whenever they listen to the show, um, that they'll have other podcasts to listen to as well. So that's why, really, I wanted to kind of make sure we get to that part of the podcast and talk about your podcast. So if you would, tell us how the name of your podcast, how it started, what you guys talk about, kind of what your goals are, and all of that. Before we get to that, I have a special announcement. I've just released my very first book. It's an ebook and it's entitled
Logic's Book of Knowledge. What I did is I combined all my Control Logic's articles from the last 10 years into an ebook. I updated them, I added new pictures, and I made it all available for just $9.99. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you want to support the show and the channel and the blog, then please check out my brand new ebook, Logic's Book of Knowledge, which you can get over at theautomationblog.com/BOK1.
Sure. Yeah. The origin story of Automation Ladies. I've told it a couple times now. So if anybody knows this already and has heard this, I apologize. But yeah, like I mentioned before, I used to be in industrial automation sales engineering. And over that time in back in the day, I would sometimes, LinkedIn was new when I graduated college. I got all of my job offers through LinkedIn, right? I used to work at Keyence. So Keyence University, everybody wants to come hire Keyence people. Best way to find them is on LinkedIn, right? So I would, connect with people I met at trade shows and things like that. But there really wasn't much of a, discussion and this content that you do now, for instance. I didn't know about podcasts in our space. And I took a bit of a detour out to retail supply chain and some other things. And then when I had my kids, I invested in real estate, actually. So your example of the MLS was like one, I can't believe I haven't thought of that. Can you imagine if each individual realtor could only have their own listings and had to call each other directly to find those houses for sale? That would be ridiculous. Anyway, I digress. So I came onto LinkedIn again when I started with Quotebeam. And I was moving from Washington to Texas. It had been COVID for a while, been very isolated. And I noticed that there was a lot more discussion going on LinkedIn. I saw people like Aaron Prather posting about robotics and Jake Hall posting about, manufacturing videos. Like I used to love watching How It's Made. Here was little snippets of how it's made for me. I ended up seeing Megan Zimba, and I got, I think Jake connected me with her, and I interviewed with her on Mavens of Manufacturing. And I thought, how cool, there's now, I can listen to podcasts about industrial automation that I had no idea about. And I also ran across this girl, Allie G. She's called Alicia Gilpin. She is a control systems engineer. And she started out with, a chemical engineering degree, and then made her way into the systems integration space. And she was in Washington. I was like, man, I just moved from there. She was my neighbor. I wish I could have met her in person. And just thinking through, also as a small startup, right? I don't have a marketing budget. I can't send out big, pay for a lot of ads and things like that. So I thought, how do we get our name out there and start to interact with our customers more, except for we had local ones in the Bay Area that were working with us. But I wanted to know, what everybody was doing, right? So I found Allie, and she ended up starting a little chat, just a group message on LinkedIn of all the women that she knew that were into automation stuff. I think she called it Girls Messing with Automation Hardware. And it was just kind of cool because, being a woman in this industry, I'm pretty used to being the only one in the room or one of a handful in, the 200-person sales meeting or whatever that is. And it's never bothered me. I've always felt at home, in those situations. I took an AP physics class in high school where I was the only girl in the class. And it's not something I cry about. It's something I enjoyed, but there was always downsides to that as well. And I didn't realize how cool it was to have other girls to talk to about this stuff. Because not only can we relate about our interest in automation and those sorts of things, but then, kind of from our girls' perspective, oh yeah, that happened to you. Oh man, that happened to me too. And so our good friend Courtney Fernandez, who's now an applications engineer at UR, she started a Saturday Zoom call for us to just be able to meet over video. And she's like, if you have kids, whatever, don't worry about it. I got my kids in the background. Let's show each other robot demos and stuff. And I actually never ran into Allie there, but we were both, part of that group. And I'm sorry, this is probably kind of long, but I started listening to a podcast called Office Ladies, which is, if you're familiar with the show The Office, the TV show, it's Angela and Pam, the two characters from The Office. They are actually best friends in real life, and they have a podcast where they talk about The Office. And I heard that, and I was like, man, I love their banter, their friends, and then they have this thing in common, which is that they were both on The Office, and they like talking about it. And I found it to be really entertaining. And I just had this weird idea. I was like, what if I do a podcast? I wish I had a friend to do a podcast with called Automation Ladies. And at that point, Allie and I had been chatting, over LinkedIn. I had sent her some cable for her home lab. Like, I was just really into what she was doing. So I messaged her and I asked her, I was like, hey, would you want to do like a podcast or anything together? And lo and behold, she said yes. So that's how Automation Ladies was born. And then I made a website and a LinkedIn, like I threw together a little mock-up of like what the cover could look like. I mean, I'm no professional, so it was just like, hey, here's some fun ideas. And then it really took the both of us to make this happen, because I probably would have iterated forever until it was perfect and never put anything out. Whereas Allie just posted about it. She's like, coming soon, Automation Ladies here. And then I was like, oh, no, we really got to do this. And for us, I mean, the primary motivation I thought was, I don't hear any of these podcasts in our space with girls or women, I guess. I'm kind of in a weird spot. I'm like, my age, I don't mind being called a girl. Sometimes I say that, right? We're women. And I felt so cool about finding someone that I connected with like that. And I thought I would love, there are probably tons of other women or girls out there that our message or our chatting about automation would resonate with. And so let's open up what is kind of a small chat, right, of women that already know each other, to open up the conversation so that anybody can hear it. And if it's their cup of tea, they can join us in some way. So we have a couple of goals with the show. One is to just increase the representation and add another voice to the conversation that maybe wasn't well represented before. And then two, we personally came to industrial automation, in kind of weird pathways. And almost everybody that we've talked to is the same. And we really see that, hey, we desperately need more people in our industry. Like, Allie has more work than she can handle because she can't find enough controls engineers to work for her, and her customers are the same. So the more we can encourage all types of people to come into this field and realize that you don't need a 4-year college degree to get into it. You can start out as a technician or a mechanic. I mean, there's just so many different avenues to be in this industry that are maybe not very well represented in popular culture. That's the other goal that we have, is to tell those stories so that more people can see, like, hey, that could be something for me.
Yeah, no, and that's a great story. I have 2 adult daughters myself, and I have one, I think she's 13 now, my granddaughter. And, sadly, I had 4 kids. None of them got into programming. So as a young adult, as a preteen and a teen, I was just drawn into the world of the Apple II and the Commodore VIC-20 and 64 and TI-99A and all these great, when the home computers first came out. I just love programming, and I love showing people what I learned, which is how I ended up becoming an instructor here. But
Mm-hmm.
I went to school for electronics, and so I've always loved building with my hands. My father's a mechanic, and I thought, well, maybe one of my kids will become an engineer. Maybe they'll get into electronics or they get into programming. And I do have one of my daughters is a scientist. She has a science degree, but she's using it more for eco stuff. And I do have a son who's works for Epic Games
Mm-hmm.
doing gaming stuff, but he's more into the story side, less into the coding side. He tells me all the time, Dad, I'm not a coder. So I wish one of my kids would have got into automation or would have got into computer programming or electronics or engineering, and none of them really chose that. But there is a need there, and it's a great field. And you know, the ideas of yesteryear, where you had to be an electrician to be an automation person, you do have to know electricity. You do have to know all those basics. And with my degree in electronics, we all started, electricians and electronics people did the same thing for the first year, learning basic electricity and all that. But really, automation involves a lot of design, a lot of mechanical, a lot of programming, right, and a lot of electrical. And I think mechatronics is really been a good fit for people wanting to get into automation because of how it covers all of that. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's not like maybe you think like a lumberjack. Well, that's kind of really sway, probably 99% men just because of physical build and whatnot. But automation, I don't see, just from spending 32 years in this industry, I think it's an equal opportunity type of environment, because just any smart people who like tech can be in it, whether you're a guy or a girl, and
Absolutely.
so I want to encourage any young ladies out there who are, going to college and thinking, well, you know, check it out because automation is very cool, and I think it's definitely a space. Um, Probably similar to other high-tech arenas like aerospace engineering and, those types of things. It's really open for all people. Um, and that's my opinion, anyways. And I love to see that we're getting podcasts like Automation Ladies out there, and that side of the industry is growing and growing. And there's a lot more sales engineers that are ladies. There's a lot more tech support. We just had one of the top people on from Siemens on their
Hmm.
VFDs, is a lady. We've had a top person on from Rockwell who's heading up their Studio 5000, who's a lady. So I think it's a great, I mean, we're a 50-50 country almost. And I think
Yeah.
we should see that in automation in the years coming will be a 50-50 mix, which is normal and natural in the way I would expect things to turn out in this industry anyways. But well, that's very cool. So I want to encourage the audience. So where's the best place to like? Let's talk about your Automation Ladies website, which is kind of maybe a splash or landing page, and then talk about the different platforms you're on. I think you're on all the big platforms, but let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so we have our audio podcast, which I will apologize to any listeners in advance. Our production value is pretty terrible. We have a really wonderful producer that we got like after we recorded season 1, not knowing at all what we were doing. And so she's done her best with the material that she was given. And now we're, starting to record season 2 and hopefully get it better this time. But we have an audio podcast. Our website is called automationladies.io. And you can find all of the episodes there. You can listen to them directly, or you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, most places where you see, podcasts syndicated. At this point, we have our audio episodes there. You can also, on our website, we started doing, each guest has their own little profile page. A lot of our guests have really cool things going on as well. And if you listen to an episode and you want to find out where they can be found or followed, they have links to all their social medias and things like that on our website. Same thing with our sponsors. We have some wonderful companies supporting us, like you mentioned, Siemens. We really appreciate them helping us out. And we have little profiles for them there as well. The other part of Automation Ladies is really because we found each other on LinkedIn, right? Our audience is mainly on LinkedIn. So we've done a few LinkedIn Live events, and we plan to do more because the audio podcast is one thing, it's audio conversations, right? But then there's, we want to do demos, not us. Like, you do demos where you know what you're doing, right? We want companies that we are interested in learning about to demo to us, because there's way too much stuff out there, and we are too busy in our day to day to just have everybody call on us and give us demos and stuff. But I really see a future too where engineers, or even just interested parties in general, can go find and watch demos of products they're interested in, whether or not they have an immediate need to buy it, or they have a sales engineer that managed to come to their location and give them a demo, right? So we are doing those things because they're video on LinkedIn Live, and then we will have a YouTube channel where we'll publish those things as well. The other thing about our page on LinkedIn, so if you follow Automation Ladies LinkedIn page, we actually repost a lot of other people's content that we feel is, kind of in line with our mission of just showing more representation of the types of jobs in automation, seeing women in the trades, opportunities for people, for educational programs, for, trade schools, and showing, for instance, right now it's Automation Fair this week, right? Neither one of us are there, but it's one of the, well-known industry trade shows. And the industry trade shows have a problem with representation, just like our entire industry does, right? The general population that walks these shows is the industry professionals that have been in it for a long time. And so it looks like, a sea of men, mainly, in their older, there's of course young people and women and everything else, right? But I think the more that we can, if we see, like, we reposted some pictures from Automation Fair that are showing some girls and women there, just for the sake of, for us, for the younger girls that are thinking about going into this industry, the more they can see of themselves in it, the more likely they are to feel comfortable and want to come into it. So we post a lot of content, both educational and what we find interesting, pages and causes that we want to support. And then what we found is that the people that follow us and support us are very supportive, sort of uplifting and positive community members. And so there's great sometimes just discussions on, the comment sections of different things that we post, because our community kind of likes to interact with each other. And that is one of our favorite things about Automation Ladies. We don't necessarily want it to be about ourselves. It's not for me and Allie to become some sort of celebrities. In fact, when we first talked about it, we were like, our goal is to get some other girls that are younger than us to come and take over and be better at it than we are. And when we're no longer needed, we'll step out and be done. Like the Daily Show, it started with one host and then he retired, and it's still a thing because people like it and it's important. And that's something that we'd love to see for Automation Ladies. So you can check out our website, listen to the audio podcast, but also, follow the LinkedIn page for like our live demos, panel discussions, and sometimes we do live interviews on there as well.
Yeah, and I can definitely confirm all, that the usefulness of that. And I used to, in my 25 years as an automation specialist, I used to try to get a lot of people to go to Automation Fair. I've been to Automation Fair, I think 18 times. And there's just so many people who can't get away. And now
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who can't get away. I'm self-employed. I'm hiring freelancers to do things for me. And to me, it's like, well, I'm going to lose a week of work if I go hang out at the show. And, I've been to the show so many times. And, how do I monetize like this, And so it's just like, it's so useful to get these experts on and have them, they're not only training the audience, they're not only telling, we're reaching, 4,000 people every day, they're also training me, keeping me up to date, helping me because
Yep.
I'm not able to get out to I'm now what the old customers that I could never get to go to Automation Fair or manufacturing and automation or SPS. Now I'm on the other side and I'm the guy who can't get there. So I kind of look at it as like kind of like what you guys are doing. It's like I'm doing a service. It's not only helping me personally, but it's helping everybody who listens to the channel, learn, if they're in the same situation. Now it's great. It would be great to be somebody who gets to go to all the shows. I mean, wouldn't it be
Yeah.
great to be, hey, we're going to hire you. You're just going to go to shows all the time and meet people and have fun. That would be awesome. But that's not a reality for most of us. We have to
Yeah.
actually make a living. So it's been phenomenal. I just had there's so many vendors out there I want to thank who've come on the show, and I want to thank you for coming on the show too, because it's I really want my audience to grow and to see all the other podcasters out there and learn what they're doing, but also the fact that you're doing Quotebeam too. I mean, that's very interesting, innovative, and I thought really on both sides our audience would really be interested in learning more about both sides of that. So now before we go, I always when I do an interview, I like to ask this question, like, so we're more than just, I mean, it may feel like all we do is work, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know a lot of times at night, the last thing I want to think about is automation. It's like, or programming or
Yeah.
managing a website. I throw on some sci-fi, maybe some Stargate or something and just kind of zone out. But so I like to ask the folks who come on, for the interviews, what do you like to do? I know you're a very busy person, but if you do get a little free time, right? What are some of the things you enjoy to do in your free time?
So currently I have two small children. So my kids are 2 and 4. And so when I get the time, like before it's dark, if it's before bedtime, I like to take them to the park or the playground, get a little fresh air and, hang out with them, that sort of thing. Um, Otherwise, like at this point, I'm so busy at work that even the stuff that I used to do all the time, like housework and, cooking, my husband is a stay-at-home dad, and bless him, I couldn't do what I do without him. But nowadays, it's kind of a treat for me if I get a chance to cook dinner. It's something that I love doing, and so I can do it kind of on autopilot, or I'll watch Netflix while I do the dishes. And because I think so much and problem solve at work, anything that I can just kind of do with my hands and turn my brain off at this point is a great way for me to, I would consider my extracurricular activities. Um, when I had a little bit more time on my hands, I love snowboarding. Although now that I live back in Texas, it's not going to be as much of a hobby as I used to do when I was in California, and I used to just drive up to Tahoe. And then the other thing that, again, is kind of I'm one of those people that just, I can't, when I get really interested in something, I have a hard time keeping it as just a hobby. It's on totally on pause right now, but I love real estate and like flipping houses, designing kitchens, bathrooms, picking out tile, that sort of thing, paint colors, trim. I love that, but that's definitely something that, those big projects I don't really have time for right now. But yeah, I'd say at this point, probably my number one, de-stressing activity is just like watching some Netflix while I while I do the dishes.
No, I hear you. Like if I have to work on my car, I'll just throw on like a talk show or a
Yeah,
podcast just to have it going in the background. So I'm not constantly thinking about work. But Nikki, I
abs-
want to thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us all about Quotebeam, all about automation, ladies. Really appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for rescheduling from 2 weeks ago when I couldn't stop coughing. It was just like even the mute button wouldn't have been enough. So thank you for your
of
patience
course.
there as well.
And I just want to say, Shawn, I really appreciate you having me on. I love that all of us creators that are trying to put out content in different ways, the more we can work together, to share valuable things with our audience. I love that. Everybody has a different point of view. And I don't think that we can talk about automation enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I have my background and you have yours and everybody it's very valuable. We're way behind the regular industry on getting this content out there. So we're all, and everybody I've talked to has been great. So it's great being part of this community and helping the vendors and the customers and everybody stay up to date on what's going on. So thank you, Nikki.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And I want to thank Nikki for taking time out of her busy day to come on the show and tell us all about the Automation Ladies podcast. With that said, if you did enjoy this episode, please consider giving us a like and a sub. And if you want to get in touch with me or you want to support the channel, you can do so over at automation.locals.com. You'll also find all of my PLC, HMI, and SCADA courses at theautomationschool.com. And with that, I want to wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.